Hey guys, tonight we drift back into a world that feels impossibly far away and yet oddly familiar. The cobbled streets of medieval Europe, where smoke from hearth fires clings to your hair and the tang of roasting meat cuts through the damp night air. Picture yourself under a sky barely lit by flickering torches and guttering candles, with a faint drizzle settling on your cloak. You're moving slowly, boots scuffing over uneven stones drawn forward by the smell of warm bread, spiced wine, and something fried that you can't quite identify. Somewhere ahead, the faint clatter of wooden ladles and the low hum of traders haggling tells you you're heading into the heart of a medieval night market. It's tempting, and honestly, you probably won't survive this if you're expecting modern hygiene standards. Food safety, as you know, it hasn't even been invented yet. The people here don't refrigerate. They salt, they pickle, they pray, and they hope. But the moment you see what's on offer, you realize your stomach doesn't care. It's hungry. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from and what's the time right now for you? Drop it in the comments. I read them all. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The market's glow grows brighter as you approach, and the mingled scents become almost intoxicating. First there's bread, always bread. Flat loaves with blistered crusts torn open to reveal steaming white interiors. You see vendors slicing them open to tuck in morsels of cold meat, creating a kind of proto-sandwich. Rye is common here, heavy and earthy in taste, while wheat bread, softer, paler, considered more refined, costs more and draws wealthier customers. The poorer folk cluster around the coarse barley loaves, sold cheap, and filling enough to keep bellies from growling. A few steps further and you pass a stall where a man in a patched leather jerkin works over a pan balanced above a brazier. He's frying thin cakes of dough fritters, he calls them, dusted with something sweet. You realize with a start, it's honey, not sugar. Sugar's far too rare here to sprinkle over street snacks. Honey runs in slow amber ribbons from a clay jug, pooling on the fried cakes until they glisten in the firelight. The crowd around him is thick. This, you gather, is a treat for a festival night, not something you'd splurge on every day. And then the meats. Always the meats. Roasted joints of pork hang from hooks, their skins lacquered and crisp sliced off in generous hunks for anyone with enough coin. Some stalls sell meat pies, portable, hearty, and suspiciously hot, even though they've been sitting there for hours. The crusts are thick and hard, less about flavor and more about sealing the filling away from dirt and flies. You bite into one in your mind and feel the dense, peppery mince within, perhaps padded out with barley or oats. There's an undertone you can't quite place. Maybe the meat isn't entirely fresh. Maybe it's the spice blend. But you remember, this is medieval junk food. You don't ask too many questions. Somewhere nearby, there's a faint sizzling and a smell both mouth-watering and faintly alarming: eels split and cooked over open flames. In London's markets, eels are everywhere, pulled fresh from the Thames that morning, and grilled with herbs or stewed with ale and onions. They're cheap, plentiful, and a working man's protein. In other towns, you might see fried fish served with a crust of crushed barley bread, eaten with fingers still dusted in flour. Sweet things are rarer, and that makes them feel even more decadent. A boy barely old enough to be working waves you toward his mother's stall, where she sells almond pastries wrapped in flaky dough. Almonds imported from faraway lands are a luxury, but here they're ground into a paste with honey pressed into little rolls and baked until golden. She keeps them warm in a linen-lined basket, and the smell alone is worth stopping for. Everywhere you look, there's some form of drink being ladled out of barrels. Ale is the everyday choice, weak enough to drink like water, stronger in taverns for those looking to forget the day. Mulled wine simmers in great iron pots, heavy with cloves and cinnamon, if the merchant can afford it. The spices carried from the east by caravan and ship are almost mythical in cost, but they turn a simple cup of wine into a warming luxury. People here will spend half a day's wages for a taste, especially in winter. You edge deeper into the market, and the crowd shifts, more laughter now, more singing. A group of apprentices is sharing a long stick threaded with chunks of roasted liver charred at the edges. A man in a floppy hat is noisily gnawing on a bread trencher, piled with what looks like pottage, a thick stew of beans, onions, cabbage, maybe a scrap of salted bacon for flavor. The bread soaks up the broth until it becomes almost pudding soft. It's not elegant, but it fills you up. If you were to ask any of these people what they think junk food is, they'd give you a puzzled look. This is just food. It's quick, it's filling, it's bought with a few pennies, and eaten standing up before the fire dies down. But to your modern eyes, the parallel is clear. Medieval junk food is greasy, salty, sweet, portable, and often questionably wholesome. It's the fried fairground dough, the late-night kebab, the convenience store hot dog of its time, just with more open flames and fewer hand-wash stations. The noise of the market is a constant murmur, punctuated by the occasional hawker's cry. Hot pies, meat, hot pies. Ale, fresh ale brewed this week. The words tumble over each other, blending into the background hum. The ground under your boots is sticky in places, maybe spilled honey, maybe ale, maybe both. You sidestep a small rivulet trickling toward a gutter and wonder if it's rainwater or something less pleasant. Some stalls specialize in regional favorites. In the Low Countries, you might find waffles, yes, waffles made from yeasted batter and cooked between patterned irons. In the German lands, pretzels twist into knotted loops brushed with lye for that deep brown crust. In France, little fried cheese pastries called rissoles might tempt you, stuffed with herbs and creamy curds. The deeper you go, the more the smells mingle into a haze. Smoke, yeast, fat spice. It clings to your hair, your cloak, even your hands if you reach out to accept a sample. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls the hour, and you realize the night is slipping on. The market won't last forever. Soon the fires will die, the vendors will pack their wares, and the streets will empty to the sound of distant dogs barking. But for now, you can keep wandering, keep tasting, keep breathing in this medieval night. And maybe if you let yourself drift with the rhythm of the crowd, you can almost forget that you've stepped centuries away from your own time. Here in the fire-lit jumble of stalls and smells, the concept of junk food feels timeless. Humans have always wanted quick comfort, in a bite something warm, something indulgent, something a little bit bad for you. You're still moving through the maze of stalls, each corner revealing something different, each turn carrying you deeper into the smells and sounds of the medieval market. Somewhere behind you, a man is still bellowing about his hot pies, but ahead, you catch a different note. Something sharp, tangy, almost nose-prickling. You follow it to a squat woman standing over a low wooden counter, her sleeves rolled up, hands moving quickly over pale wedges of cheese. It's not the kind of mild, creamy cheese you're used to. This is sharper, firmer, flecked with tiny crystals, and it's been aging in a cool cellar for months, maybe longer. She slices off chunks with a knife that looks like it's seen 3 generations of service, wrapping each portion in scraps of cloth or even leaves. A few coins and you could carry a salty, tangy snack to nibble as you wander perfect with a mug of ale or a hunk of bread. The smell might follow you for the rest of the night, but no one here minds. In fact, it's part of the charm. Near her, another vendor tends a pot of something bubbling so slowly, you wonder if it's been there since morning. It's pottage again, but this one is richer: beans, leeks, onions, and a hunk of smoked ham that must have been simmering for hours. He's ladling it into rough clay bowls for those who want to sit by the fire for a while. Others get it in bread trenchers, balancing the heavy steaming load as they shuffle off into the dark. Pottage is comfort food here, reliable, forgiving, adaptable. It's what you make when you don't have much but still want something that warms you from the inside out. You drift toward the sound of sizzling. This time it's not eels or fish, but something stranger to your modern taste offal. A man with a red wool cap is frying liver kidneys, maybe even hearts, right there on an open pan. He sprinkles coarse salt over the top, flips them quickly, and sells them by the skewer. To your surprise, the crowd here is mostly young men apprentices, perhaps laughing loudly as they wave the skewers around, tearing off bites between gulps of ale. It's cheap protein, strong-flavored and filling. In a world where meat is often expensive, offal makes sure no part of an animal is wasted. A little further along, you encounter the sweet smell of roasting nuts. A boy no older than 10 stands on a stool, stirring a shallow pan over a bed of coals. Inside are almonds, exotic and expensive, being toasted to a warm brown. He tosses them with honey and a pinch of ground cinnamon, and the scent is heavenly. You can tell by the quickness with which hands reach for them that these are a special treat. A pouch of them might be saved for a sweetheart, or perhaps devoured before the night's walk home. You pass a stall stacked with strange, pale biscuits, hard as stone, meant to be dunked in wine or ale to soften them. They're called wafers here, often made by bakers' guilds for special occasions. Some have been flavored with rosewater or orange peel, a whisper of luxury in a bite. If you crunch into one without soaking it first, you might crack a tooth, but softened in warm wine, it's delicate and fragrant. The crowd thins for a moment as you reach the edge of the square where the smell of fish grows stronger. A group of fishwives stands over baskets and barrels selling fried fish straight from the river catch. You watch one woman deftly gut a fish, coat it in coarse meal, and toss it into sizzling oil. Oil is dear here. It's often animal fat, or if you're near the coast, olive oil imported at high cost. That's why fried food is a treat. It takes resources most households don't want to waste. The fish emerges golden crisp, steaming inside. She wraps it in a scrap of parchment, hands it to a waiting customer, and is already reaching for the next one. A little further down, you see something that almost makes you laugh, a primitive kind of meat on bread that looks suspiciously like a kebab. It's chunks of lamb roasted on a spit, shaved off into thin slices, and piled onto a thick round of flatbread. A sprinkle of herbs, maybe a drizzle of vinegar, and it's handed over. The man selling them wears clothes that mark him as a foreigner, likely from the Eastern Mediterranean. The flavors he's offering are new to most locals: pepper, sumac, cumin, but you can see by the line that people are curious. You turn back toward the market's center and pass a small group of children clutching something you recognize instantly from fairs in your own time: sweet fritters. These ones are small, round, and sticky with honey, the kind that leave your fingers a mess for the rest of the night. The children are laughing, trying to pop them into their mouths without dropping them into the mud. Behind them, their mother shakes her head, but can't hide a smile. There's a low, steady drone somewhere behind you, the murmur of a man chanting over a pot of mulled cider. The scent of apples, cloves, and nutmeg swirls into the night air. He ladles it into mugs for passers-by, the steam curling up into their faces. Cider is the drink of choice here in apple country, and in winter it's often warmed and spiced. It's cheap, plentiful, and can be as mild or as potent as the brewer chooses. Beyond him, you come to a stall that makes you pause, a cellar of fried dough pockets stuffed with minced meat and onions. They're almost like little hand pies sealed and fry until crisp at the edges. You take a mental bite, the crust is hot, salty, flaky, the inside savory and rich. They'd be perfect for walking, and maybe perfect for regretting later if your stomach can't handle the oil. But that's the risk everyone here seems willing to take for the sake of a hot snack. A gust of night air brings with it the smell of roasting chestnuts. They're split open slightly so they don't explode in the heat, roasted until their shells char and their insides turn sweet and soft. Vendors keep them warm in cloth sacks, selling them by the handful. People tuck them into pockets for later nibbling them as they walk home through the dark streets. It's easy to imagine that for many here, these treats are the highlight of the week. They're a break from the steady monotony of home cooking, from endless porridge, black bread, and thin soups. In a time when life is short and work is hard, a night at the market is more than just food. It's a rare indulgence, a reminder that joy can come in small, greasy, sticky packages. You catch sight of a friar at the edge of the market smiling as he accepts a cup of warm ale from a vendor. Even the clergy, it seems, are not immune to the pull of the market's offerings. He takes a slow sip, eyes half closed, and you can almost feel the warmth sinking into him. Around you, the air is thick with human voices, the hiss of fat on coals, the distant sound of a minstrel's lute. This is not a hurried place. People linger here gossiping, laughing, sharing bites and from each other's purchases. The night deepens. Somewhere a drunkard begins to sing, his voice wobbling over the crowd. A group of women in wool cloaks huddles near a brazier, tearing apart a hot loaf of bread and dipping it into a pot of melted cheese. A dog noses around the edge of a fish stall, hoping for scraps. It's messy, loud, and a little bit magical. You know you could keep walking for hours, tasting and smelling your way through every corner. And perhaps you will, because in this moment, there's no rush to go home, no alarm clock waiting, no tomorrow to plan for. Just the warm, immediate comfort of food in your hand, the soft glow of firelight, and the hum of voices carrying you deeper into the night. You wander toward a narrower lane branching from the main square where the noise softens to a steady hum. The air here feels warmer, the smells more concentrated, as though the stalls are tucked close together for both heat and light. The flicker of small torches makes the shadows dance across weathered wooden walls. Somewhere close, you hear the unmistakable pop and hiss of something frying in deep fat. You follow your nose until you find the source, a stall run by two older women, their heads wrapped in plain linen coifs. They work in perfect rhythm. One rolls out thin sheets of dough, the other folds them around spoonfuls of spiced mashed peas. The little pockets are dropped into a wide pot of bubbling oil. When they surface golden and puffed, the women dust them lightly with coarse salt before passing them to waiting customers. These savory turnovers are humble, but the smell is irresistible. One bite would give you soft, earthy filling, wrapped in crackling crispness, exactly the kind of snack that disappears too quickly, leaving you wanting another. Just past them, you find a row of low tables covered in baked goods. Not the loaves and trenchers of the bread stalls, but smaller indulgences. There are dense gingerbreads, dark with molasses and fragrant with spices. Some are cut into squares, others into rough hearts tied with bits of ribbon, as though they might be given to sweethearts later. A girl no more than 15 offers you a sample. It's chewy sweet and sharp with ginger. In a world where sugar is a luxury, the sweetness here comes mostly from honey and treacle, lending a deeper, earthier note than modern candy. You linger a moment too long, and your eyes wander to another treat marchpane. It's almond paste, pounded smooth with honey, shaped into little fruits or flowers, sometimes even gilded with gold leaf if the baker wants to show off. The ones here are simpler, just small discs pressed with a wooden mold, so they bear a pattern on top. They melt in your mouth, sweet and nutty, leaving a faint hint of rosewater. The crowd here is older merchants with careful eyes, craftsmen still in their work aprons, women with baskets tucked against their hips. These aren't just customers looking for a quick bite. They're here for their favorites, the things they might not find every day. At the far end of the lane, you hear the hollow knock of a wooden ladle against a kettle. Someone is selling hot broth, a clear, savory soup rich with herbs and flecks of meat. People clutch their mugs and sip slowly, leaning against the wall to watch the crowd go by. As you turn a corner, you stumble upon a scene that draws a smile. A troupe of traveling performers has set up near the edge of the market. A fiddler plays a sprightly tune, while a man in patched motley juggles wooden balls. A small crowd gathers, children pressing close to see. Behind them, a vendor seizes the opportunity, selling roasted apples on sticks. The skins have split open from the heat, revealing soft, fragrant fruit inside. He rolls them quickly in crushed nuts, handing them over before the sugar in the apple cools. You keep moving the ground, now packed dirt instead of cobblestones. Here the stalls feel less polished, the food more rustic. A man with a black beard tends a long spit of sausages over a shallow trench of coals. The smell of fat dripping into the fire is almost too much to resist. The sausages are thick and uneven, flecked with herbs and garlic. He slices them into chunks and serves them with mustard sharp, nose-tingling, made fresh from ground seeds. The customers here eat them with their fingers, licking away the juices. A little further on, you come across something unusual, a flat iron plate set over glowing embers where a woman is baking thin oatcakes. She flips them with a small wooden paddle, stacking them high as they come off the heat. Some customers eat them plain warm and pliable, while others fold them around scraps of cheese or slices of salted meat. It's the medieval version of a quick sandwich, and it smells wonderfully toasty. You notice how the market has its own rhythm. Certain areas for certain foods, small pockets of quiet where people stop to talk, busier corners where the smells are strongest. Everywhere you go, you hear the low clink of coins changing hands, the murmur of haggling, the occasional burst of laughter. And above it all, the steady hiss and pop of cooking, the soundtrack of a place built on warmth, hunger, and the pleasure of eating together. You pause by a stall where a young couple is sharing a warm custard tart. The crust is thick and uneven, the filling pale gold and fragrant with nutmeg. It's a rare treat. Milk and eggs aren't always easy to spare, and sugar is almost unheard of in such quantity. But here it is, warm from the oven, a luxury they savor slowly. The man offers the woman the last bite, and she laughs as she takes it. In the lamplight, it's easy to imagine moments like this happening for centuries. Not far from them, another stall sells what look like pancakes, thin, soft, folded over a smear of jam. The jam is likely made from berries preserved earlier in the year, boiled down with honey until thick. In summer, the pancakes might be filled with fresh fruit. Tonight, in the cool air, it's the preserved sweetness that brightens them. People take them in hand, the warmth seeping through the thin cloth wrapping. You follow the scent of something roasting and come upon a small fire ringed with stones. Over it, a pot of spiced chickpeas is simmering. This is a taste brought by travelers from the south, and the smell is exotic cumin coriander, a hint of cinnamon. The vendor serves them in small wooden bowls, warm and fragrant. You take a handful in your mind and feel their soft bite the way the spices linger on your tongue. A man beside you mutters about oysters, and you realize there's a stall selling them piled high on a bed of damp reeds. In coastal towns, oysters are cheap and plentiful, eaten raw or cooked quickly over coals. Here, the vendor shucks them with practiced speed, handing them over with a splash of vinegar. The briny tang cuts through the richness, and those who can't get enough keep coming back for more. As you drift toward the market's heart again, you see how the flickering torchlight turns the air to gold. The crowd is thicker here, the noise louder, the smells overwhelming. Somewhere to your left, a baker pulls flatbreads from the oven, their edges charred and blistered. He stacks them in tall piles, selling them as fast as he can. Next to him, a woman ladles out hot lentil stew, her ladle moving like clockwork. It's here in the bustle and glow that you realize medieval junk food is more than just the things being sold. It's the way people linger with each other, the way food turns strangers into brief companions, the way the night air feels softer with a warm bite in your hand. There's no rush to leave, no need to hurry home while the fires still burn. This is the heart of the evening, and you're standing in it, surrounded by heat light and the oldest comfort there is. The crowd seems to carry you along now, each movement pulling you toward yet another scent, another flicker of firelight, another small indulgence. You pass under a tangle of cloth canopies strung between stalls, the fabric sagging slightly from the damp night air. Lanterns sway overhead, casting shifting shadows across faces half lit in amber. Somewhere nearby, a wooden mallet strikes against a block, the sound rhythmic, purposeful, a butcher chopping through joints of meat. You edge closer and see his stall glowing with the orange light of an open brazier. The butcher's assistant is threading skewers with alternating chunks of pork and onions. They're roasted slowly, the fat dripping down to sizzle on the coals. Every so often, he brushes the meat with a dark glaze ale thickened with honey and herbs so it glistens in the firelight. The smell is rich and almost sweet, and people queue patiently, each waiting their turn for a hot skewer wrapped in a strip of coarse brown bread to catch the juices. Beyond the butcher's glow, the air cools again, and you find yourself at a fish stall. Tonight, the special is pike, the long, bony fish filleted into strips and grilled with parsley and vinegar. In a shallow pan, smaller fish are being fried, whole sprats and whitebait served by the handful in folded leaves. You can almost taste the crunch of their tiny bones, the salt clinging to your lips. A few customers stand nearby, eating them with one hand and gesturing animatedly with the other, telling some story or other, their laughter competing with the hiss of the frying pan. Just beyond them, you see something unexpected, a cauldron of hot milk. The vendor ladles it into cups and stirs in a spoonful of honey, handing the drink to children whose eyes brighten at the sweetness. Milk is rarely drunk fresh here. It's usually churned into butter or made into cheese before it spoils. But tonight, warmed and sweetened, it becomes a soothing comfort, a soft contrast to the strong ale and spiced wine most adults are sipping. Following the milk seller's line, you drift toward a low table piled high with baked rounds dusted in white. At first you think it's flour, but it's actually crushed sugar, a rare treasure here. The vendor calls them sugar cakes, though the sweetness is gentle compared to what you know. They're dense, buttery, flavored with a little nutmeg. People buy them to take home wrapped in scraps of linen, but a few are eaten right away, still faintly warm from the oven. A little further on, you hear a voice chanting deep and steady, the sing-song call of a man selling spiced nuts and dried fruit. His wares come in small woven baskets, figs from the south raisins, almonds, walnuts, sometimes even a few dates if a caravan has arrived recently. The dried fruit is sticky and dark, the nuts glistening with a glaze of honey or dusted with cinnamon. In a season when fresh fruit is rare, these are little bites of sweetness to be savored slowly. At the far end of the row, a baker works over a flat stone slab, flipping rounds of dough with a stick. They're flatbreads, simple but fragrant, brushed with garlic oil and sprinkled with herbs before being stacked in tall piles. The smell alone draws a crowd. Customers tear them apart to wrap around bits of roast meat or dunk into bowls of thick stew. You realize it's the medieval equivalent of street bread in almost any age, humble, affordable, and endlessly adaptable. You turn into a smaller side alley and find it quieter, though not empty. Here the stalls feel more like personal extensions of someone's kitchen. A woman with sleeves rolled high is turning spits of small game, maybe rabbits, maybe pigeons, over a narrow fire trench. She bastes them with dripping fat, the skin blistering to a crisp. She sells them whole to those who can afford the price, but she also carves off pieces for a few pennies. The meat is dark, rich, and probably the freshest you'll find here. In the stall beside her, a man is tending a pot of something thick and brown. The aroma is strong, nutty, faintly bitter roasted chestnut soup. He ladles it into small wooden bowls, the texture smooth, the flavor deep and earthy. It's not a common market food, but on cold nights it sells well, offering a hearty warmth that lingers long after the bowl is empty. You notice how the further you move from the central square, the more the foods change. The flashy sweets and skewers give way to sturdier fare, roasted roots, boiled grains, meat pies that are more crust than filling, but can survive a walk home. In one stall, you see great mounds of turnips and carrots roasted until their edges are blackened. In another, small earthen pots hold baked beans, cooked with fat, and onions until thick and smoky. These aren't impulse snacks. They're the kind of food that can stretch a family's meal into the next day. Near the end of the lane, you find a solitary brewer pouring mugs of hot spiced ale. He works without hurry, measuring each spoon of spice before dropping it into the steaming drink. The air here smells of cloves and citrus peel, and each sip seems to paint a warmth across the drinker's face. Some linger cradling their mugs with both hands, others tip them back quickly and move on. A few steps further, and you encounter a different sort of comfort, a man selling fried cheese. He cuts thick slices from a round, dredges them in coarse flour, and drops them into hot fat. The cheese bubbles and sizzles the crust, turning golden in seconds. Served on a scrap of bread, it's molten in the middle, salty and rich, a taste that clings to your tongue long after it's gone. You pause to watch a group of friends share one, passing it between them, and laughing at how the cheese strings stretch in the torchlight. Food here isn't just eaten, it's shared, teased, over, enjoyed in the open air. Every bite seems to invite conversation, every cup of ale an excuse to linger another moment. Back toward the main square, the music grows louder again. Someone has brought out a drum, its steady beat blending with the tune of a piper. Children dance in small circles while their parents watch, mugs in hand. The glow of the fires seems brighter here, the air thicker with the mingled scents of roasting, frying, baking. You can feel the pull of the market in your bones now. It's not simply the food, though, that's more than enough to keep you wandering. It's the sense of being woven into the life of this place. Every stall is a small story, every vendor a character in the night's unfolding tale. And you, a visitor from another age, are part of it for as long as you choose to stay. The drumbeat and pipe fade behind you as you drift once more into a slightly quieter part of the market. Here the air is thick with the scent of wood smoke, the fires burning lower and slower. You pass by a row of vendors who seem less hurried, their customers lingering at the counters, leaning on elbows, chatting with neighbors they haven't seen since the last market day. The glow of coals paints everything in shades of orange and deep brown, and you can hear the occasional crackle as fat drips onto the embers. On your left, a man in a felt cap is bent over a griddle, spreading a thick batter across its surface with the back of a wooden ladle. He sprinkles the top with crushed herbs, perhaps parsley or chives, before flipping it in one deft movement. These savory pancakes smell of onion and garlic, and as they come off the griddle, he folds them around a slice of salted pork. It's a rich filling bundle that warms your hands as soon as you hold it. Across from him, a table is piled high with pies. These aren't the delicate custard tarts or fruit pies you've seen before. These are rugged, hand-sized meat pies with dark, sturdy crusts designed to keep their contents safe. The vendor splits one open to show a curious customer the filling, coarse-ground mutton with leeks and pepper steam curling upward into the night. She explains that the crust will hold for days, making it as much a portable meal as a fresh indulgence. A few stalls down, a woman is roasting hazelnuts over a shallow pan. She stirs them constantly, so they brown evenly, the shells taking on a warm, toasty color. When she tips them into a wooden bowl for cooling, the smell intensifies nutty sweet and faintly smoky. Children wait with open palms, eager for the small brown treasures that can be cracked and eaten on the spot. A small crowd gathers where two men are working over a barrel, cut in half and fitted with a grill. Long skewers of spiced meat sizzle above the fire lamb, perhaps seasoned with herbs that carry a whisper of far-off places. The men turn the skewers with practiced ease, slicing pieces directly into flatbread for those who prefer to eat as they walk. Each bite is hot, aromatic, and just a little bit wild, the sort of flavor that might linger in your memory for days. As you wander further, you pass a baker selling something curious, small round loaves split and filled with mashed beans. The beans have been seasoned heavily with garlic salt and oil, turning them into a creamy spread. These bean sandwiches are popular with laborers, cheap, sustaining, and easy to carry in one hand. You can almost feel the soft, warm bread in your palm, the savory filling pressing gently against your fingers. Not far from him, you hear the clink of iron against iron. A pot hanger swings slowly over a brazier, holding a kettle of mulled pear cider. The fruit's sweetness deepens as it warms, mingling with cloves and perhaps a hint of ginger. The vendor ladles it carefully into mugs, and the steam carries the scent down the lane. People wrap their hands around the cups, inhaling deeply, before taking a sip, letting the warmth seep into their bones. On the far side of the square, you spot a table covered in a scattering of brightly colored paper twists. Inside each is a small cluster of candied seeds, usually anise or fennel, coated in a thin shell of sugar. They crunch between your teeth, releasing bursts of sweet and licorice-like flavor. These tiny candies are a luxury bought mostly for children or for small celebrations, and their colors catch the light like tiny jewels. A man with a barrel chest and an apron darkened by years of work tends a great iron pan full of bubbling stew. He lifts the lid to stir, revealing a thick mixture of barley beef and carrots. The smell is deep and meaty, the kind of food that clings to your ribs. He serves it in small wooden bowls for those who want a hearty meal, and in bread trenchers for those who prefer to take it away. The line here is long, but no one minds waiting. The stew's warmth and aroma promise a reward worth the time. You weave through the crowd, and find yourself at a stall glowing with the golden sheen of dripping fat. A woman is frying donuts or something close enough to them that you'd call them that in your own time. The dough is enriched with eggs and a little honey dropped into hot oil until puffed and browned. She lifts them out with a slotted spoon, drains them quickly, and dusts them with more honey before passing them to her customers. The smell alone makes you linger, the sweetness wrapping itself around you like a blanket. Just beside her, a man sells wedges of soft cheese, but he does something unusual. He spreads the cheese on slices of warm bread, then drizzles it with a thin stream of honey. The combination is startlingly rich, the sweetness softening the tang of the cheese, the bread acting as a warm, gentle cradle for it all. He works quickly, the cheese melting slightly in the fire's heat, the honey catching the light like pale gold. In a corner where the crowd thins, you find a vendor with a great clay pot sunk into a bed of coals. He's baking root vegetables in the ashes. Potatoes are centuries away from this market, but turnips, parsnips, and carrots roast beautifully this way. He pulls them out with tongs, brushes away the ash, and hands them over wrapped in a scrap of cloth. The vegetables are sweet and tender inside the skin, charred just enough to give a faint bitterness that balances the natural sugar. Further along, a tall man in a wool tunic tends a small brazier with strips of dried meat hanging above it. He's selling jerky-like snacks made from beef or venison cured with salt and smoked until they're tough and dark. These are meant to be chewed slowly, softened in the mouth, before swallowing, and they're the perfect traveling food. Customers buy them in small bundles, tucking them into pouches for the walk home. You turn a corner and stumble upon a sight both humble and inviting, a wide, shallow pan of peas stewed with mint. The green is muted by the long cooking, but the flavor is fresh and sweet. The vendor serves them with a sprinkle of coarse salt, and customers eat them with small wooden spoons. It's a simple dish, but in a world where vegetables can be scarce in winter, it's a welcome change from endless grain and meat. The night is wearing on now. Some vendors are beginning to pack away their wares, stacking empty baskets and scraping the last bits of dough from their mixing bowls. But others work faster, trying to sell off what they have before the fires die completely. You can feel the tempo of the market shifting, not quite winding down yet, but leaning toward it. The crowd is looser, the laughter louder, the last drinks poured with less care for counting coins. And still the smells cling to the air, bread and smoke, honey and fat spice and yeast. The market has wrapped itself around you entirely, the flickering torches casting your shadow across the uneven stones as you take another slow turn down the lane. Somewhere ahead, there will be one more thing worth stopping for, one more taste worth carrying into the night. The market feels a little different now. The early bustle has given way to a deeper, more languid rhythm. People are no longer rushing from stall to stall. They've settled into clusters, cups in hand, leaning on barrels or against wooden posts, speaking in low voices that rise into occasional bursts of laughter. You walk past a group of men singing a rough sea shanty, their mugs sloshing with every emphatic beat. The air is heavier now, saturated with the mingling of every scent the night has offered. Roasting meat, frying dough, sweet spice, and the unmistakable tang of wood smoke. You follow a faint metallic clink toward a stall where a thin man in a leather jerkin works over a small brazier. He's roasting quail, tiny birds, trussed and set over the coals, their skin crisping to a rich brown. Every so often he dips a brush into a pot of butter mixed with herbs and bastes them, the fat dripping down in sizzling streaks. He serves them whole, wrapped in a twist of parchment. The bones are delicate enough to chew, and the flavor is rich for such a small morsel. In your hand, it would feel almost weightless, but one bite would tell you it was worth the coins. Nearby, a woman sells warm barley cakes, studded with dried berries. She stacks them in small piles, the tops dusted with flour. The smell is nutty and faintly sweet, and customers bite into them as they walk the berries bursting against their teeth. She tells anyone who will listen that the berries were picked at midsummer, dried carefully in the sun, and kept in linen bags until tonight. Each cake is a small reminder of the warmer months, a flash of summer in the cold. The lane ahead narrows, lit only by a few torches stuck into the ground. You find a man seated cross-legged behind a flat griddle, flipping rounds of dough stuffed with chopped onions and cheese. They sizzle lightly as the filling warms the cheese, melting into the onion, creating a savory perfume that reaches you long before you arrive. He hands them over, wrapped in leaves, the warmth seeping through as you carry them away. In the darkness, their scent feels even stronger, a beacon in the night air. A little further along, you come upon a low table covered with small clay pots, each sealed with a crust of dough. The vendor cracks one open for a curious customer, revealing a stew of lentils and lamb. The crust is meant to trap the steam and flavor inside, turning the dish into a pocket of rich, meaty comfort. People eat it directly from the pot, with a wooden spoon, steam curling into their faces. The crowd here is smaller but more intent. These are the lingering buyers, the ones who have wandered the market for hours, and now want something to take home, a loaf of bread for tomorrow's breakfast, a piece of cured meat for the week ahead, a pouch of spices if the coins allow. You pass a spice seller's table and see neat little cones of ground cinnamon, ginger pepper, and mustard seed. The colors are deep and warm, their smell intoxicating. He warns you that pepper costs dearly, worth more than its weight in many other goods. Even so, people buy a pinch carried home carefully for special dishes. You pass into a brighter stretch again, where a pair of men are selling roasted goose. The birds are large, glossy, with fat, their skin crackling as the carver's knife passes through. Goose is a festive meat, not an everyday one, so this stall is busy with people who want a piece before the night ends. The meat is rich and gamey, and the carver is generous with the dripping, pouring it over slices of bread before handing them over. Not far from the goose, you smell something yeasty and sweet. A woman is pulling braided loaves from a small oven, their crusts glossy from an egg wash sprinkled with coarse sugar. She slices them thick and offers them plain or spread with butter. The bread is soft, almost cake-like, a treat that will be remembered long after the night is over. Past her, a man stirs a pot of mulled ale, its surface bobbing with slices of apple and a few cloves. He ladles it into mugs with a flourish, claiming it will warm even the frostiest heart. People drink it with smiles, their cheeks already flushed from the heat of the fire and perhaps the strength of the ale. You notice a quieter corner where a single stall glows softly in the torchlight. The vendor here sells oat porridge, but not the plain kind. He stirs in cream, honey, and crushed hazelnuts, turning it into a warm, fragrant bowl that customers cradle between both hands. Some add dried fruit, stirring until the sweetness spreads through the porridge. It's a humble dish made indulgent, the sort of thing that reminds you that comfort doesn't always have to be elaborate. The mood of the market is loosening even more now. A boy chases a dog between the stalls, laughing until the animal slips away into the shadows. Two women are deep in conversation, tearing apart a loaf of bread between them, their hands moving without thought. A minstrel leans against a post, plucking at his lute absent-mindedly, as if to keep his fingers warm. You pause at a stall where the vendor sells roasted marrow bones. He cracks them open and serves the soft, rich marrow spread onto bread topped with a sprinkle of coarse salt. The flavor is intense, buttery, meaty, primal. It's the sort of food that feels like it must have been eaten in exactly this way for hundreds of years, perhaps even longer. Next to him, a young girl is selling sweetmeats, little balls of dried fruit nuts and honey rolled together and dusted with cinnamon. She sells them by the handful, and they disappear quickly, popping into mouths like confections at a fair. Their sweetness is deep and natural, the chewiness lingering long after the bite. As you near the edge of this lane, you spot another curious snack, small twisted strips of fried dough, brushed with vinegar and sprinkled with salt. The vendor calls them vinegar twists, claiming they're popular in the port towns. The sharpness cuts through the fat, making them oddly refreshing for something fried. Customers crunch them with enthusiasm, the sound carrying above the murmured conversations. The fires are beginning to burn lower now. Vendors stack their goods, cover their baskets, and call out the last of their wares in sing-song voices. Children cling to their parents half asleep, but still clutching some final treat. The market's earlier clamor has softened into a murmur that seems to blend with the night itself. Still, even as the night deepens, you can feel the pull of one more loop, one more taste before the stalls close completely. The promise of food you've never seen before, of smells that might surprise you, draws you onward. Somewhere in the glow ahead, the market still waits, holding back its last few secrets. You drift forward again, drawn by the shifting glow of firelight and the low call of vendors urging the last of their goods onto late-night wanderers. The crowd has thinned just enough that you can weave more easily between stalls, your steps sounding softer now on the damp cobblestones. In the air, the scents have changed slightly less of the sharp sizzle of fresh cooking, more of the deep, mellow perfume of dishes that have been simmering for hours. Somewhere nearby, a pot lid rattles gently as steam forces its way out. You follow the sound until you find a man hunched over a cauldron, stirring with a long wooden paddle. The liquid inside is thick, a deep reddish-brown flecked with herbs and bits of onion. He calls it spiced venison stew, heavy with black pepper and a splash of wine. The meat has been cooking so long that it falls apart with the merest nudge of the ladle. Customers lean in for their portion, holding out bowls or trenchers as the fragrant steam curls up into the cold night. You imagine the heat seeping through your hands as you carry it away, the pepper's warmth spreading through you with every bite. A few steps on, you pass a stall lit by nothing more than a single oil lamp, its glow pooling over trays of flat, brittle wafers. These are not plain. They're pressed with ornate designs and dusted lightly with ground cloves and cinnamon. The vendor snaps off a corner to offer a taste. It's crisp, sweet, and faintly spicy, the sort of delicate snack that crumbles the instant it meets your tongue. You can tell by the neat stacks and careful wrapping that these wafers are meant as gifts as much as food. Just beyond, a younger man in a woolen hood is frying small patties of minced fish mixed with herbs and breadcrumbs. He shapes them with his hands, dropping each into a shallow pan, where they hiss immediately. The smell is fresh yet savory, and he serves them with a thin sauce of vinegar and mustard. The customers eat them quickly, licking their fingers, their eyes flicking toward the pan, as though hoping for a second round. You turn down another narrow lane where a table is crowded with bowls of pickled vegetables, cabbage, onions, and even cucumbers sliced thin. The sharp tang cuts through the rich aromas of the night. The pickles are sold alongside hunks of coarse bread, the two eaten together to balance flavors. In a world without refrigeration, these tangy bursts of preserved summer are more than just a side dish. They're a welcome jolt to the palate. Near the end of the lane, you find something unusual, a shallow basket lined with straw, and filled with tiny, delicate pastries. The vendor explains they're made from thin dough wrapped around crushed nuts and honey, then baked until crisp. They remind you of far-off lands of flavors brought by traders and travelers. Their sweetness is deep, not cloying, and their small size makes them dangerously easy to eat without realizing how many you've had. A faint sweet smoke drifts toward you, leading you to a brazier where a man is roasting sugar on thin sticks of bread. The heat melts the sugar into a glossy shell that hardens as it cools. He spins the sticks slowly, letting the coating form an even glaze. The result is part sweet, part smoky, a strange, pleasing mix that crunches first, then softens into caramel on your tongue. In a busier stretch again, you hear the cheerful chatter of a group gathered around a brewer's stand. He's pouring hot, mulled mead from a small cask, the scent of honey and herbs swirling in the torchlight. Mead has a different sweetness than ale or cider, rich and almost floral, and the added spices make it a drink for lingering over rather than gulping down. Some customers sip slowly, others drink deep and call for another, their laughter carrying into the night. You pass a low counter stacked with earthenware bowls of soft cheese, the tops smoothed flat and dotted with fresh herbs. The vendor serves it by the scoop, spreading it onto warm bread or oatcakes. The cheese is tangy but mild, with a creamy texture that seems almost decadent compared to the harder-aged varieties common in most homes. People crowd close, breaking off pieces of bread to share, dipping again and again until the bowl is scraped clean. Not far away, a young woman sells spiced apple turnovers. The crust is thick and rustic, the filling soft and golden from long cooking. She tucks each one into a twist of parchment, so it can be eaten on the move, the juices safely contained. The cinnamon and nutmeg rise with the steam as she opens the oven, and for a moment, the entire lane smells like a festival. In a quieter corner, a man is selling roasted parsnip chips, thin slices fried in hot fat until curled and crisp. He sprinkles them with salt from a small pouch and hands them over in little cones of folded paper. The crunch is sharp, the flavor sweet and earthy. It's a simple pleasure, one you suspect would be addictive if you let yourself keep eating. Another stall is devoted to candied orange peel. The strips are boiled until tender, rolled in sugar, and left to dry into chewy, jewel-like lengths. They gleam faintly in the lamplight, each piece holding the bright bitterness of citrus under its sweetness. In the cold air, the sugar crackles slightly between your teeth before giving way to the soft fruit beneath. By now, the market's pace has slowed enough that you can hear more clearly the smaller sounds, the hiss of the last skewers over dying coals, the rustle of leaves underfoot, the faint murmur of vendors speaking to one another in low tones. Some are sharing cups of drink, others simply leaning against their stalls, tired but content. And still, here and there, something new appears, a brazier piled with roasted chestnuts, their shells split open to reveal steaming, golden interiors. A pot of broth so clear you can see the herbs floating within, ladled into mugs, for those wanting a light end to the night. A basket of honey cakes, shaped into animals, their forms crude but charming. The air is colder now, but you barely notice. Each step takes you past another fragment of someone's craft, another fleeting indulgence, another reminder that even in a time without neon signs or bright shop fronts, the lure of food at night is timeless. And as you take it all in, the sights, the smells, the small moments of sharing, you begin to wonder how much longer the market will last before the last torch sputters out. But for now, there's still a little glow ahead, still a few voices calling softly into the night. And as long as there's one more corner to turn, you'll keep walking. The voices ahead are softer now, almost muffled by the cool air and the faint mist that has settled over the market. You step carefully over slick cobblestones guided by the dim light spilling from the last cluster of stalls. Here the crowd has thinned to a gentle trickle, late wanderers, lingering friends, and a few solitary figures moving slowly with food cradled in both hands. You notice a man leaning over a squat clay oven built right into the ground. He's baking small rounds of bread, topped with a thin layer of mashed peas and onions sprinkled with dried herbs. Each comes out blistered at the edges, the topping browned in places. He serves them on bits of parchment, the warmth radiating into your palms as soon as you take one. The scent is earthy and homey, nothing extravagant, but exactly the kind of simple comfort you could eat without thinking one after another. A little further on, a low table glistens in the torchlight. Here, a woman is selling glazed nuts, walnuts, and almonds coated in a thick, sticky syrup made from honey and a hint of spice. She stirs them slowly in a copper pan over the coals, the glaze catching in threads as it cools. Customers lick their fingers afterward, savoring the last sweetness clinging to their skin. Next to her, a narrow counter is stacked with dense rye rolls, each sliced and spread with a layer of soft cheese. The vendor tucks a few sprigs of parsley on top for color, then presses the halves together for an easy handheld bite. The bread is chewy, the cheese sharp and creamy, and the freshness of the herbs cuts through both in a way that feels unexpectedly bright in the cool night air. The lane beyond is even quieter. You pass a man roasting small songbirds over a delicate wire rack, their tiny legs curling as the heat works its way through. He bastes them with oil mixed with garlic and thyme, and when they're done, he serves them whole. The meat is tender and intensely flavored, the sort of indulgence only a few coins might buy on such a night, but one that feels far richer than its size suggests. Near him, a young girl offers a tray of small, lumpy cakes dusted with powdered sugar. She says they're made with ground almonds and a touch of rosewater baked until just firm. They have a delicate chew, the sweetness softened by the floral note. Her customers bite them slowly, letting the flavor linger on the tongue. At the next stall, a man stirs a shallow pan of sizzling mushrooms. They're cooked with chopped leeks and a splash of ale finished with a pinch of coarse salt. He spoons them into small bowls for anyone who stops, and the aroma is rich and earthy, clinging to your clothes even after you move on. Further ahead, you find a brazier where a woman is frying thin strips of dough until they curl and blister. She sprinkles them with a dusting of cinnamon and hands them over in little paper cones. The first bite shatters lightly, leaving a soft sweetness behind. It's a treat that vanishes almost too quickly, encouraging you to reach for another cone before you've even finished the first. In the soft corner light, a tall man is pouring warm beer from a small barrel. He stirs each mug with a stick of rosemary before handing it over. The herb perfumes the drink subtly, its piney note threading through the malty aroma. Some sip with closed eyes, perhaps imagining themselves in a forest clearing rather than a cobbled market lane. Past him, a table holds neat rows of small, savory pies. The crust is thick, baked until dark brown, and inside is a mixture of minced pork onions and dried fruit. That sweet-salty combination feels strange at first, but each bite makes more sense, the richness of the meat softened by the burst of sweetness. The pies are sturdy enough to carry on a walk, though most people here seem content to stand in place, eating them slowly. At the next fire, a man is roasting chestnuts in a large, shallow pan. You've seen them elsewhere tonight, but these are dusted with coarse sea salt while they roast. The salt crusts lightly against the skin, giving each bite a faint crunch before the soft, sweet nut emerges. He tips them into cloth pouches, the heat seeping through to the customer's hands. Deeper in the lane, you pause at a stall that feels more like a small kitchen. The woman here is boiling dumplings, little balls of dough stuffed with minced beef and herbs. She lifts them out with a slotted spoon and drops them into a shallow bowl of broth. The dumplings are soft and steaming, the broth rich and savory. People hunch over their bowls, the steam curling into their faces as they eat. A few steps farther, and you come across a tray of golden baked apples. They're cored and filled with a mixture of raisins, spices, and honey before being roasted until the skins wrinkle. The filling seeps into the apple flesh, turning each bite into a sweet, warm spoonful of autumn. They're served with a small piece of bread to soak up the juices that escape into the dish. In a darker corner, a man is offering roasted marrow served in the bone. He splits the bone lengthwise, sprinkles the soft interior with salt and pepper, and hands it over with a scrap of bread. The marrow is rich and silky, the bread soaking it up like a sponge. People linger with this snack, each bite small and deliberate, savoring the luxury of it. The further you go, the more you notice how the market is beginning to fade into its closing mood. Some stalls are shuttered entirely, their fires doused and their counters empty. Others still have a little stock left, their vendors calling quietly to passers-by, offering discounts on what remains. The air smells faintly of ash, now mingled with the lingering perfumes of honey spice and roasting meat. You take one more turn and find a final cluster of warmth. A woman ladles hot lentil stew into mugs, the thick mixture dotted with pieces of carrot and onion. Next to her, a boy sells hunks of coarse bread to go alongside it. The pair work silently, the only sounds the splash of stew and the rustle of wrapping cloth. The customers here look grateful for something hearty before the walk home. And beyond them, just at the edge where the market's light meets the night's darkness, a small brazier holds the last treat you'll find on this stretch. It's a pan of honey fritters, golden, and dripping, each one glistening in the faint light. The vendor hands them over quickly, and they vanish into the night as if they'd never existed at all. You pause, the quiet finally settling around you like a cloak. The market still hums faintly behind you, but here on the edge you can almost hear the city's heartbeat, the distant toll of a bell, the creak of a cart's wheels, the muffled bark of a dog. You realize that the night is slipping away, and soon even this small glow will be gone. But for now, the warmth of the last bite lingers on your tongue, and the faint scent of spice clings to your hands. You ease back toward the market's brighter heart, your steps unhurried now. The air has cooled enough that the warmth spilling from each stall feels like a soft push against your skin. Every breath carries some new thread of aroma. The ghost of fried dough, the peppery whisper of roasted meat, the sweet tang of cider steaming in deep kettles. You pass a man balancing a shallow iron pan over a low flame. Inside, he's turning rounds of bread soaked in an egg and milk mixture, frying them to a golden crust. When each piece is done, he dusts it with honey and cinnamon before handing it over. The result is soft and custardy inside, crisp at the edges, a familiar idea in your world. But here it's a rare indulgence made richer by the freshness of the farm eggs and the scarcity of milk. Beside him, a woman in a heavy wool shawl stirs a pot of mulled cider so dark it's nearly crimson. She's dropped in slices of apple cloves and curls of orange peel, letting them bob and release their scent. Customers take their mugs in both hands, leaning into the steam as though it might carry the warmth all the way into their bones. You can smell the sweetness from several steps away, a welcome invitation on this chilly night. You turn down a smaller lane where a group of boys sits on overturned crates, chewing on what looks like roasted roots wrapped in paper. A stall nearby confirms it long, thin parsnips roasted until soft, their skins rubbed with salt and herbs. They eat them like you might eat fries in your own time, alternating bites with swigs of weak ale from shared mugs. Their laughter rings out in quick bursts, bouncing between the timbered walls. Further along, an elderly man works behind a counter stacked with shallow baskets of sugared nuts. The nuts are glossy under the torchlight, each coated in a thin shell of sweetness that cracks under the tooth. He offers small paper twists for a penny, and his customers walk away shaking the last sugared crumbs into their palms. At the next corner, you find a brazier with strips of meat sizzling above it. This is spiced pork belly, the fat rendered, and dripping steadily into the coals, sending up a fragrant smoke that curls through the lane. The vendor slices it into thick bites and serves them on small squares of bread, the juices soaking instantly into the crust. People eat them in 2 bites, eyes closing briefly as they chew. You pause at a table where a young woman is shaping little balls of dough, dropping each into a pot of hot fat. They puff almost instantly, turning golden within seconds. She pulls them out and rolls them in crushed almonds, handing them over still warm. The first bite is crisp, then soft, the almond adding a faint sweetness that lingers after you swallow. Nearby, another vendor sells small, square hand pies filled with minced lamb and onions. The crust is firm but tender, holding its shape even as the filling steams inside. They're portable, easy to eat, one-handed, ideal for walking through the last stretch of the night's market. A group of men stands nearby, eating them between sips of strong ale, their talk drifting from business to gossip. Just past them, you see a stack of what look like folded pancakes, each one spread with a thin layer of fruit preserve. The vendor says it's plum jam made during the summer harvest and kept for nights like this. The pancakes are soft and slightly chewy, the tartness of the plum bright against the warm, mellow dough. She folds them into quarters and hands them over wrapped in paper, a neat, tidy parcel for the road. In the next glow of light, a man is roasting small cuts of mutton on skewers. He sprinkles them with coarse pepper and herbs, brushing them occasionally with vinegar to keep the meat moist. The smell is robust and hearty, the vinegar's sharpness cutting through the richness. The skewers vanish as quickly as he can prepare them, his knife flashing in the firelight. Not far from him, a boy tends a pot of boiled chestnuts. He cracks each one before handing it over the steam, puffing out into the cold air. The chestnuts are sweet and mealy, their warmth radiating through the simple paper wrap. People carry them away in pockets, nibbling slowly as they walk. A quieter corner hides a small stall selling spiced lentil cakes. They're fried to a crisp edge, the center still tender, flecked with green from chopped herbs. The vendor serves them with a little dish of sharp mustard, the heat making noses tingle. It's the kind of snack that's both humble and filling, the sort you might eat standing still, just to savor it without distraction. Further on, you pass a brewer's table where hot ale is ladled from a tall, narrow kettle. He adds a dash of ginger and a spoon of honey to each mug before handing it over. The smell is warm and spicy, and his customers linger near the brazier, drinking slowly while trading the day's news. One last turn brings you to a small fire where a woman is tending what looks like a wheel of cheese set directly over the embers. As it softens, she scrapes the melting surface onto slices of bread, the gooey layer stretching before settling into place. The smell is rich and faintly smoky, the texture creamy against the warm bread. People close their eyes for a moment as they take their first bite, as though the taste demands a pause. By now, the market's edges are starting to crumble into shadow. A few stalls close completely, their counters cleared, their torches snuffed. Others burn low but steady, determined to catch the last of the night's trade. The voices are fewer, but they carry more clearly now, a laugh from one corner, the faint notes of a fiddle from another. You find yourself slowing, without meaning to, reluctant to reach the point where the firelight ends. The market has drawn you in so completely that the thought of stepping back into the empty streets feels like a loss. But you also know there are still corners you haven't seen, treats you haven't tasted, pockets of warmth you haven't stood in. And so you turn again, letting the glow pull you onward one more time. You step back into a brighter stretch where the market still clings to its last bursts of life. The remaining vendors are holding out their fires, burning low but steady, each hoping for a final rush of customers before the night surrenders to darkness. The air here is warm enough to make you loosen your cloak a little, though you can feel the chill waiting just beyond the stalls. To your right, a man works over a round griddle set atop a bed of glowing coals. He pours a thin batter in careful circles, watching it bubble and set before flipping it with a small wooden paddle. Each flat cake gets brushed with melted butter and a sprinkle of crushed herbs before being folded and handed over. The scent is toasty and savory, the warmth immediate in your palms. You see one customer tear off a corner and pop it into their mouth while still walking, eyes closing in satisfaction. A few steps farther, a heavy pot of stew simmers quietly. This one is different from the rich meat stews you've passed earlier. It's a humble vegetable mix of carrots, turnips, onions, and barley seasoned with a handful of fresh parsley. The vendor ladles it into thick clay mugs, handing it over with slices of bread for dipping. It's not luxurious, but it's the sort of wholesome filling fare that people carry home for a late supper. Across the way, a woman with a broad smile tends a shallow pan of fried cheese curds. She stirs them gently so they brown on all sides, their squeak softening in the heat. When she spoons them into little bowls, the curds glisten, releasing a faint, nutty aroma. A sprinkle of coarse salt is the last touch before they're passed to waiting hands. Just beyond her, a vendor is selling oat cakes stacked in neat piles, each spread with a smear of thick honey. The honey has crystallized slightly in the cool air, giving each bite a faint crunch before it melts on your tongue. People eat them slowly, savoring the sweetness, as they lean against the wooden posts that mark the stall's edge. You pause at a stand where a man carves thin slices of smoked fish, likely herring from a large, glistening fillet. He serves them on small rounds of rye bread topped with a scatter of chopped onions. The sharpness of the onion cuts through the richness of the fish, each bite briny and bright. It's a common taste here, though. For you, it might feel like a rare delicacy. A little further down, a boy is selling cups of warm milk spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg. He pours each serving from a narrow-necked jug, the steam curling gently upward. The drink is mild and comforting, perfect for those who have had enough ale for the evening or simply want something sweet before heading home. In a quiet corner, you spot a small brazier where a woman is roasting strips of goose skin. The fat crackles as it drips into the fire, sending up sharp, savory smoke. She salts the crisped skin and hands it over in small bundles, each piece light but intensely flavorful. The customers eat them with quick bites, as though afraid the delicate crackle might vanish before they can finish. A few stalls away, someone has set up a display of small tarts filled with minced dried fruit. The filling is dark, sticky, and glistening rich with spices. The crust is short and crumbly, flaking apart as you take a bite. Each tart feels like a fragment of celebration, something you might find at a feast table rather than in the street. But here they are, a part of the market's nightly offerings. Past the tarts, you notice the faint hiss of boiling water. A man is selling dumplings made of simple flour dough, stuffed with shredded cabbage and leeks. He serves them with a ladle of hot broth, the dumplings bobbing gently in the cup. They're hearty and soft, perfect for holding in one hand as you walk slowly through the cool night. Further along, a woman in a patched cloak stands behind a tray of sweet fritters shaped into loose knots. She dips them in honey before setting them on a sheet of parchment, their surfaces glistening in the firelight. The knots are crisp on the outside, soft inside, and sweet enough to make people lick their fingers between bites. You hear a faint crackling and find another vendor roasting apples on skewers. The skins have split from the heat, revealing tender fruit beneath. Some are brushed with honey, others rolled in coarse sugar before roasting. Customers bite into them cautiously, the steam curling into the air with each mouthful. Close by, a small wooden board holds neat rows of pickled eggs. Their pale surfaces are marbled faintly from the brine, the whites firm and the yolks bright. The vendor serves them with a pinch of coarse salt, and people eat them in 2 or 3 bites, washing them down with ale. In a quieter patch, you find a pot of thick porridge made from millet. The vendor stirs in dried cherries and a trickle of cream before ladling it into wooden bowls. It's warm, sweet, and a little tart from the fruit, a gentle contrast to the heavier, greasier fare you've seen tonight. On the far side of this lane, someone is roasting rabbit over a small spit. The meat turns slowly, the vendor brushing it with a glaze made of vinegar, herbs, and a touch of honey. When the meat is sliced, the juices run clear, the edges crisp from the heat. He serves it on bread to catch the drippings, each bite tender and subtly sweet. The market's sound has shifted again. The earlier hum has softened to a scattered mix of voices, punctuated by the occasional clink of a mug or the rustle of parchment wrapping. Vendors call out more quietly now, their words half-hearted, but still inviting. A few customers linger near the last fires, unwilling to step away into the dark streets beyond. You notice how the torches burn lower, now their flames smaller, but still casting enough light to make the night feel safe. The shadows beyond seem heavier for it, a reminder that this warm, noisy place is a small island in a much larger, quieter city. And yet here at the edge of closing the market still offers comfort. The smell of roasting, frying, and sweet spice lingers in the air. The heat from the braziers still reaches out like open hands. You take another slow step forward, thinking that perhaps there's still some more taste to be found before the fires go cold. The lanes ahead have thinned to scattered pockets of light, each stall standing like a small island in a widening sea of darkness. Your boots make soft, hollow sounds on the cobblestones, mingling with the distant hum of the few voices still bartering or laughing. Somewhere behind you, a mug is set down on a wooden counter with a muffled thud followed by a lazy chuckle. You're drawn first to a squat iron cauldron nestled in a ring of stones. The vendor here stirs steadily with a heavy ladle, lifting up thick ribbons of soup that fall back into the pot with a soft splash. He calls it ale broth, a mix of strong beer, onions, bits of bacon, and a little flour to give it body. The smell is deeply malty, the kind of scent that feels like it might warm you just to breathe it in. He serves it in wide wooden cups, urging you to drink it while it's hot enough to sting your lips. Beside him, a woman works at a long wooden board covered in small rounds of dough. She drops each into a pan of bubbling fat until they puff and turn a deep golden brown. These little fried rolls are brushed with honey and sprinkled with ground hazelnuts, the glaze clinging to your fingertips. People carry them away in linen napkins, biting into them as they walk toward the darker edges of the market. A little further on, you find a man with a row of flat stones balanced over a fire pit. He's baking oatcakes directly on the hot surface, flipping them once with a quick twist of his fingers. They're sold plain or with a smear of soft cheese or even folded around a slice of roasted meat for those with a few extra coins. The smell is rustic and toasty, the kind that makes you think of hearths and farm kitchens far from the city. Across from him, a vendor has a tray of small, shallow pies filled with mashed root vegetables. The crust is thick and sturdy, designed for traveling, and the filling is warm and comforting. These are the kind of pies you could tuck into your pouch and eat later, but most customers are biting into them now, letting the steam curl up into the cold night. A young boy hurries past carrying 2 mugs of steaming liquid. You follow him to a stand where an older man is ladling hot spiced milk into cups. It's pale and creamy, laced with a touch of honey and a faint dusting of cinnamon. The customers cradle the mugs close to their chests, sipping slowly, as though drawing out the moment before they have to move on. Just beyond you, pause at a brazier where strips of salted beef are sizzling over low heat. The vendor slices them into narrow pieces, handing them out with small wedges of coarse bread. The meat is rich and a little chewy, its saltiness lingering in your mouth long after you've swallowed. It's the kind of snack that pairs perfectly with a drink, which is exactly what the neighboring stall provides: cups of weak ale ladled from a small barrel, each one still faintly warm from being kept near the fire. In a quieter corner, you find a woman pulling baked apples from a shallow clay dish. Each apple has been cored and stuffed with chopped nuts, honey, and a pinch of cinnamon before roasting until soft. The skins have wrinkled slightly, splitting, to reveal the tender fruit within. She serves them with a small spoon for scooping the sweet, fragrant filling. Near her, a man tends a pot of lentils stewed with onions and herbs. He serves the lentils in small bowls, sometimes adding a scrap of salted pork for flavor. It's humble fare, but it smells rich and grounding, the sort of food that leaves you feeling steady rather than heavy. A little further down, another stall offers a treat more unusual: spiced wine jelly. It's made by boiling wine with sugar and spices, then letting it set until firm enough to cut into small cubes. The pieces gleam dark red in the lamplight, their flavor sharp and sweet at once. Customers pop them into their mouths like sweets, letting them dissolve slowly. You pass a man carving slices from a long loaf of dense rye bread. He spreads each with a thick layer of soft butter and tops it with a sprinkle of coarse salt. It's a simple combination, but one that feels like a small luxury, the butter cool and creamy against the hearty chew of the bread. Past him, you hear the hiss of something frying in shallow oil. A young woman is cooking small patties made from mashed peas and chopped herbs. She turns them carefully so they crisp on both sides, the smell bright and green against the darker scents of roasting meat. She serves them on small wooden plates with a wedge of lemon for those who can afford the extra tang. In another corner, you find a man roasting slices of pumpkin until they caramelize at the edges. He brushes them with honey before sliding them onto small wooden skewers. The sweetness deepens in the heat, the soft flesh almost melting when bitten. Customers carry them away in little bunches, the skewers sticking up like thin wooden flags. You slow your steps as you near the end of this lane. The stalls are fewer now, but each one seems lit a little more brightly against the growing dark. A brewer pours mulled mead into wooden cups, the steam curling upward in the flickering torchlight. A baker stacks the last of her sweet rolls into baskets for the morning. Somewhere a child's laughter rings out high and fleeting before vanishing into the hum of the night. The market is fading, but it hasn't let go of you yet. Every new scent, every faint clatter of ladle against pot keeps drawing you on. The fires are lower, the coals glowing deep red, but they still reach for you with their warmth. And somewhere ahead, there's still one more stall, one more taste waiting for your slow approach. The lane ahead narrows the cobblestones here, slick with the night's damp. The market's outer edges have a different feel, quieter, almost conspiratorial, as if the stalls that remain are for those who know exactly where to look. The voices here are low, the bartering softer, and the food more rustic than the grand displays nearer the center. You pause first at a small brazier, where a man turns skewers of liver over the coals. The smell is strong, metallic, and savory at once, softened slightly by the herbs he's tucked between the pieces. As each skewer is done, he slides it into a scrap of bread to catch the juices, handing it over with a nod. The customers here eat slowly, chewing thoughtfully, the fat from the meat soaking into their fingers. Just beyond, a woman works at a wide clay pot of pottage thick with cabbage, onions, and beans. She ladles it into small bowls for those who want something warming before the walk home. It's not fancy, but the steam rises like a promise, and the earthy scent clings to the air long after the bowl has been emptied. Across the way, another vendor is selling thick slices of coarse bread, spread with dripping, the rendered fat from roast meat, solidified slightly in the cool night. She sprinkles it with salt, and sometimes a few chopped herbs, the result rich and deeply satisfying. It's a humble food, but the line of customers waiting for a slice speaks for itself. A boy hovers beside a small table piled with baskets of dried fruit. The figs are dark and sticky, the raisins plump from the autumn harvest, and the dried pears pale gold under the lamplight. He sells them by the handful, tipping them into scraps of cloth that customers knot and tuck into their belts. The fruit is sweet, chewy, and concentrated little bursts of summer carried into the cold season. Near him, an older man is roasting turnips until their skins char. He serves them split open with a dab of butter melting into the pale flesh. The smell is unexpectedly sweet, with a faint sharpness from the root's bite. Customers cradle them in their palms, blowing on them before taking the first steaming mouthful. You move toward a flicker of light and find a woman frying cakes of mashed beans and onions. She flips them with a flat wooden spatula, the edges turning crisp as the centers stay soft. She serves them plain for the frugal, or drizzled with a little honey for those willing to spend more. The mix of savory and sweet makes them memorable, the kind of flavor that lingers in your thoughts. Beside her, a man ladles warm ale into cups from a small barrel. He stirs in a pinch of spice for each customer, his hands moving slowly, as if he has all the time in the world. The drink is mild, more for comfort than celebration, and those who take it linger nearby, talking quietly in the dim light. You step toward another brazier, where a round of cheese is softening over the heat. The vendor scrapes the molten layer onto thick bread, pressing it down so it melts further into the crust. The smell is rich, the texture molten and indulgent. A woman nearby takes a bite, closes her eyes, and simply stands there for a moment, swaying slightly in place, as if the taste has taken her somewhere else. A narrow table holds a stack of small pasties, thick pastry filled with chopped pork and apples. The sweetness of the fruit mingles with the meat's savory richness, making the air fragrant as the vendor slices one open to show the filling. Customers take them carefully. The juices can spill if you're not paying attention. In the next glow of firelight, A vendor tends a pot of barley stew studded with bits of mutton. The smell is deep and nutty with the faint tang of long simmered meat. He scoops it into small clay bowls, each one handed over with a slice of dark bread. People eat it standing near the fire, using the bread to wipe the bowls clean. You wander toward a quieter corner where a young couple tends a tray of roasted chestnuts. They split the shells with quick taps of a small knife before dropping the nuts into the pan. The scent is sweet and smoky, curling upward into the night air. They work in easy rhythm, the kind that comes from long practice. Customers take their handfuls away, warming their fingers before eating. A few steps on, you pass a stall selling oat porridge sweetened with honey. It's thick and comforting with a faint, grainy texture that speaks of its simple origins. People cradle their bowls in both hands, eating slowly, as if to stretch the warmth as far as it will go. Across from them, a small table holds candied almonds coated in a thin layer of sugar. They're pale and delicate-looking, each one a tiny crunch of sweetness. The vendor sells them in small paper cones, the sound of them rattling faintly as customers carry them away. Toward the far end of the lane, you find a man roasting bits of goose meat on skewers. He brushes them with a glaze of honey and pepper, the smell sweet and sharp at once. When they're ready, he slides them off the skewer into a piece of bread, the juices staining the crust. Customers bite in hungrily, chewing with both hands cupped around the bread to keep the filling from falling. The night has deepened now. You can feel the market breathing slower, the long exhale before the final quiet. The torches still burn, but their light is softer, and the edges of the lanes have fallen into shadow. You sense that you're moving toward the last circle of warmth, the last flavors of the night before that the market's voice fades into the silence of the sleeping city. The market's heartbeat is faint now, the rhythm slowed to a soft murmur. You notice how the sound of your own steps feels louder, echoing between the timbered walls as you walk. Most of the stalls you pass are already dark, their counters cleared, their brazier fires banked down to dull red embers. But here and there, little pockets of light still flicker, and you can see shapes moving, vendors giving one last effort to empty their baskets before the night truly ends. The first glow you reach belongs to a man ladling a thick brown broth into wooden cups. He calls it hunter's soup made from game scraps, onions, carrots, and a generous measure of black pepper. The steam rises in ribbons curling into the cool night air. Those who stop here drink it slowly, letting the warmth travel down into their chests. The man seems in no hurry to serve. He moves with the tired grace of someone who's been at the brazier since sunset. Beside him, a woman is slicing dense rye bread and spreading it with goose fat. She sprinkles each slice with salt and presses it into the hands of customers like a gift. The bread is chewy, the fat rich, and the salt sharp enough to make you want another bite almost immediately. Some tuck the slices into their pouches for the walk home, while others stand right there chewing with their faces tilted toward the fire for a last moment of heat. Just beyond, a boy sits cross-legged on a stool beside a tray of roasted onions. Their skins have turned papery and dark in the heat, hiding the sweet, soft flesh inside. He cracks the skin open with his fingers, hands it over to a waiting customer, and goes back to tending the next batch. The onions give off a caramel scent that seems almost too gentle for the rough, smoky air. You drift to another stall where a pot of hot milk simmers over the coals. The vendor stirs in a spoon of honey, for each serving the surface swirling into golden clouds. It's a drink for the end of the night, soothing, mild, with no bite to wake you. People wrap both hands around their cups, sip slowly, and let their conversations fall into long, comfortable pauses. Across from him, a man is tending a small stack of skewers threaded with alternating cubes of cheese and bread. He toasts them lightly over the embers so the cheese softens and the bread crisps at the edges. It's a modest snack, but the smell is irresistible. He hands them over wrapped in scraps of parchment, and the cheese pulls in long strings as people bite down. In a narrow wedge of light, a woman is frying thin patties of minced fish mixed with leeks and herbs. The sizzle is faint now, the oil barely bubbling, but each patty still emerges with a crisp edge. She passes them over on small squares of bread, the heat seeping instantly into the crust. The taste is mild but savory, the herbs brightening the bite. Next to her, another vendor is offering baked apples stuffed with dried fruit. They're smaller than the earlier ones you saw, almost like sweet morsels rather than full desserts. He sprinkles them with a little cinnamon before handing them out, and the warm scent carries down the lane. Customers bite into them carefully, the steam curling into the cool night. You pass a basket piled high with small, pale rolls sprinkled with coarse salt. The vendor slices them open and fills them with a dab of soft cheese or a slice of cured meat, depending on the customer's coin. The bread is still faintly warm from baking the crust, soft rather than crisp. People tuck them into their sleeves or pouches to carry along. In another corner, a brewer pours the last of his mulled wine into clay cups. The pot is nearly empty, but the aroma is still rich cinnamon clove and something sharper, perhaps pepper. He waves away coins for the last few customers, smiling tiredly as they raise their cups in thanks. Farther down, a low table holds a tray of honey cakes, the tops glazed to a golden sheen. The vendor cuts them into small squares, handing them over in scraps of cloth. The cake is dense but moist, the honey flavor lingering with each bite. It's the kind of sweet you imagine would last in memory far longer than it does in your hands. A final stretch of stalls leads you toward the edge of the market. Here, a woman roasts small roots, carrots, parsnips, and turnips in a clay dish buried under the coals. She turns them out into waiting bowls, the skins blistered the insides, soft and sweet. A sprinkle of coarse salt finishes them, and they vanish almost as soon as they're served. The quiet now is deeper. You can hear the hiss of the few remaining fires, the soft crack of wood shifting in the embers. Somewhere nearby, a dog pads past, nose down, searching for scraps. The chatter of the crowd has thinned to scattered fragments, as if the night itself is holding its breath before letting go entirely. And yet, even in these fading minutes, the market still holds warmth. Every stall still lit is like a beacon. Every last bite a small celebration against the cool, creeping dark. You feel the gentle pull of one more taste, one more step, before you have to turn your back on the glow. The market feels like it's breathing its last, but not in a hurried way. More like an old hearth fire settling into embers, steady glowing, unhurried, and unwilling to vanish all at once. Your steps sound softer now, cushioned by the quiet. Even the flicker of torchlight seems slower, casting long, swaying shadows across the uneven stones. You approach a stall where a man stands behind a battered copper pot, its sides darkened from years of use. Inside, a pale broth simmers with flecks of green herbs floating on top. He calls it herb water, a light soup for the end of the night, not much more than parsley leeks, and a touch of garlic in a thin, warming base. It's not meant to fill the belly, but to soothe it after a night of heavier eating and drinking. Customers sip it like medicine, their hands wrapped around the cups as they nod in quiet thanks. Beside him, a woman is selling the last of her seed cakes. They're small and slightly crumbly, dotted with anise seeds that release a faint licorice fragrance as you bite down. She wraps them in linen scraps for people to carry away, though a few can't resist eating them on the spot, brushing stray crumbs from their tunics. A few steps farther, and you come to a man toasting thick slices of bread over an open flame. He brushes each slice with oil and rubs it lightly with garlic before handing it over. The bread crackles under the heat, the garlic's scent blooming into the air. It's simple, but the customers smile as if it's the best thing they've eaten all evening. In a shadowy corner, a boy stirs a pan of stewed plums. The fruit has broken down into a dark, jammy mixture, glistening under the torchlight. He spoons it into small clay dishes, sometimes topping it with a pinch of ground cinnamon. The taste is tart and sweet all at once, clinging to the spoon in a thick ribbon. It's the sort of dessert that lingers on the tongue, carrying with it the memory of summer orchards. Next to him, an older man offers warm, spiced beer. The liquid is cloudy in the torchlight, the scent carrying notes of ginger and clove. He pours it into squat mugs, urging people to take slow sips, so the spice has time to bloom in the mouth. His customers linger, shoulders hunched comfortably toward the brazier's heat. You find yourself drawn toward a small brazier, where skewers of mushrooms are roasting. The vendor has brushed them with oil and sprinkled them with salt, letting them blister and darken. He serves them with a wedge of coarse bread to catch the juices. The earthy scent mingles with the sharper aroma of roasting meat, drifting from another stall nearby. That stall belongs to a woman turning a spit with small game birds, perhaps pigeons or doves rotating slowly over glowing coals. She bastes them with a glaze of honey and herbs, the skin crisping as it turns. Each bird is served whole on a thick slice of bread, the juices soaking into the crust. The customers here eat with their hands tearing at the tender meat, in the quiet satisfaction of the hour. Farther along, you pass a table holding shallow baskets of candied fennel seeds. They're tiny, bright, and crunchy with a sweetness that gives way to the herbal bite beneath. The vendor sells them in little paper twists, and the faint rattle of seeds follows each departing customer. Near the lane's end, a man stands behind a simple wooden board with a row of hard cheese wedges. He slices them thin and serves them with a smear of apple paste on rye bread. The combination is tangy sweet and earthy, the flavors balanced in a way that feels just right for closing the night. Across from him, a woman tends a pot of thin barley gruel. It's plain compared to the rich stews and roasts of earlier, but it carries a quiet comfort. She ladles it into small cups, adding a trickle of honey for those who want it sweet. It's the kind of food that eases you toward rest, calming the body as much as the hunger. You turn one last corner and find a brazier holding roasted chestnuts, perhaps the 5th or 6th time you've seen them tonight. But here they seem different. The shells are split, just so the scent curling upward in a faintly sweet spiral. The vendor works slowly, pressing each handful into a small cloth pouch, the heat seeping into the hands of those who take them. The street beyond is darker now. The edges of the market are fraying. Some stalls have gone entirely dark, their counters bare, their owners vanished into the night. But here, in this small pocket of warmth, there's still a hum softer than before, but still alive. A woman nearby laughs at something said quietly. Someone hums a few notes of a tune. A dog rests near a brazier, its eyes half closed, soaking in the last heat of the evening. It's clear you're near the final breath of the night's trade. Soon the fires will be banked for good, the last scraps packed away, and the market will dissolve back into the cobblestoned quiet of the sleeping town. But for now, you can still walk, still taste, still keep hold of the night's glow just a little longer. You sense the night folding in now, like the final page of a book being turned. The torches are burning low, some nothing more than stubs guttering in their iron sconces. The air is cooler, carrying with it the faint scent of dying embers and damp stone. The crowd that once pressed shoulder to shoulder has thinned to a handful of stragglers, those reluctant to let go, or perhaps simply slow to find their way home. You move toward a stall where the vendor is clearly winding down. His brazier holds only a few glowing coals, but he's still turning a small spit, threaded with scraps of pork. The fat drips slowly into a clay dish below, and he brushes it back onto the meat, as if out of habit. When a customer appears, he slices off the last morsels and tucks them into a wedge of bread, pressing it into their hands with a quiet, "Here you go." Beside him, a woman is wrapping the final wedges of pie, thick, crusty slices filled with root vegetables and a little bacon. She ties each in a scrap of cloth, handing them over to customers who slip them into pouches for the road. The smell of the pastry is rich and buttery, a reminder that even in these closing minutes, the market still has small luxuries left to give. A few steps away, a boy tends a small pot of milk over a flickering flame. He stirs in a spoon of honey and a pinch of cinnamon for each cup. The drink is simple, soothing, the sort that could ease the chatter from your mind and settle you into quiet. A man nearby drinks his slowly, his eyes half closed as if already drifting toward sleep. You pass a low table holding a few remaining oat cakes spread with butter. The vendor offers them at a low price, now knowing they won't keep until morning. People take them gratefully, slipping them into pockets or breaking them in half to share. The butter melts just enough to leave a sheen on the fingers. Farther along, you find an elderly woman stirring a pot of lentils for the last time tonight. She ladles out the final bowls, each with a slice of rye bread balanced on top. Customers linger here, holding their bowls in both hands, breathing in the steam before taking slow sips. The lentils are thick and hearty, a quiet ending compared to the rich feasts earlier in the evening. A brazier nearby holds the last batch of roasted apples. Their skins have split, revealing soft, fragrant flesh within. The vendor lifts them out one by one, handing them to the last few customers. Some bite into them immediately, ignoring the heat, while others tuck them away for later. The scent of cinnamon and honey clings in the cool air even after they've gone. In the final stretch of stalls, a man is carefully lifting baked onions from a bed of ash. He brushes away the soot and serves them with a little salt. Their sweetness is almost floral after the long, slow roast. Customers eat them standing by the brazier, nodding to one another in quiet appreciation. Near the edge of the market, a woman sells the very last of her candied nuts. She scoops them into paper twists, pressing each into a waiting palm with a smile. The glaze is still faintly warm, sticking lightly to the fingers. She wipes her hands on her apron, looks at the now empty pan, and lets out a small sigh of satisfaction. The soundscape has changed completely. Gone is the layered chorus of haggling voices, clattering pans, and crackling fires. In its place is a softer arrangement. The occasional murmur of conversation, the gentle clink of a mug being set down, the low, steady rustle of someone packing away their stall. Somewhere, a cart's wooden wheels creak as it rolls slowly out of the square. A man walks past, carrying a small cloth bag that gives off the unmistakable scent of roasted chestnuts. He's headed for the darker streets beyond the glow of the market fading behind him. Another figure hurries by with a loaf of bread tucked under one arm, their cloak pulled tight against the night air. The market is emptying itself into the town, scattering its warmth across the sleeping streets. You pass one last brazier where a pot of mulled ale is nearly gone. The vendor offers you a cup, waving away payment with a tired grin. The drink is warm, sweet, and faintly spiced, the sort of flavor that belongs to this night and will vanish with it. You drink slowly, feeling the heat travel down through you, anchoring the memory in your bones. As you turn toward the edge of the square, you glance back one final time. The fires are few now, their glow dim, but still holding the market together. The air still carries traces of every scent you've walked through tonight. Smoke, spice, roasting meat, baked bread, honey. The sound is little more than a hum, but it's enough to remind you that only a short while ago this place was alive with color and motion. You step out of the market's circle of light, the cobblestones darker here. Behind you, the glow lingers like the last ember of a fire fading, but not gone. Ahead lies the quiet of the sleeping town, but in your mind, the warmth and taste of the night will stay for hours, yet woven into the slow drift toward rest. The market is gone now, folded back into the quiet streets and shuttered windows of the sleeping town. The glow of the braziers is only a memory, their warmth replaced by the cool stillness of the night air. You walk slowly, your steps lighter now, as if each footfall might wake the world around you. The scents still cling faintly, a trace of honey on your fingers, the ghost of smoke in your hair, the soft shadow of spices lingering at the back of your throat. They are warm memories, small treasures that will fade in time but never truly vanish. As you wander homeward, you think of the faces in the market, the vendors with their hands always busy, the friends leaning together over shared mugs, the children clutching their sticky treats. They are part of the night's fabric, woven together by firelight laughter and the quiet comfort of food in hand. The city around you is still now. A shutter creaks in the wind. Somewhere far off, a dog barks once, then falls silent. The cobblestones gleam faintly under the moonlight, guiding you step by step toward your door. Inside, the air is warmer. You loosen your cloak, the faint scent of the night market rising once more. The world outside feels far away now, just the memory of lights, voices, and the slow, endless offering of one small bite after another. You let your eyes close. The hum of the market drifts in your mind like a lullaby, the crackle of fire, the clink of mugs, the soft calls of vendors, the laughter of strangers. It all settles gently, carrying you down toward the still, dark heart of sleep.